Some countries like Malaysia have made it illegal for foreign buyers to own property in their countries. That deals with the foreign buyer problem, which was a large part of the increase in home prices over the last 20 years. But the last 10 or 11 years have seen this explosion in these giant Wall Street firms coming in and buying up houses. They gain this massive economy of scale. You know, if they own, like in the Spring Hill neighborhood in Nashville, these companies own 5% of all the houses. When they buy them, they go in and they put in their own appliances and their own, you know, refrigerators and washers. I mean, they're spending an average of $25,000 a house when they buy these houses. And that way they have their own repair service, and it's the same parts for the same stuff for every house. They have their own local rental management company so that they've got, you know, a law firm and everything to evict people and, you know, deal with renters and problems like that. They've got economies of scale that no individual homeowner can compete with, that Airbnb can't compete with. So do we ban, corporations from owning houses? Or owning more than a certain number of houses? Or owning more than a certain percentage of houses in any given city? Is that, I mean, you can do that with zoning. Is that the first step? Or on the other hand, do we flip it around and do like, you know, what happened in the 1950s when my dad bought his one and only house. He bought it in 1957 and literally died in it. He died in the living room of it. I was sitting next to him, you know, in his living room as he died, and in that house. And, you know, which was 2006, I mean, years later, right? He bought that house with a VA loan. He had been, you know, he'd volunteered for the draft during World War II and, you know, went off to Japan. And so he qualified for a Veterans Administration loan. We were subsidizing middle-income, middle-class people to buy houses. Do we go back to doing that? Do we start offering incentives to people to buy housing? I think, frankly, regulating the market is a stronger way to do it right now. Because, I mean, you know, by the point my dad made, I remember in the 1980s when, during the Reagan administration, when mortgage, Louise and I bought a house in Atlanta during that time in 81 or maybe 82. And we were paying 13%. That was the mortgage rate. And my dad was telling me how the banks were calling him up and saying, hey, wouldn't you love to roll your loan over? Because he was paying 1.5% or something like that with this VA loan. And his house was almost completely paid off, and they wanted to get him into one of these 18% or 13%, you know, mortgages. But right now, home mortgages are, you know, running 2 to 3%. So I doubt that we could do much to help middle-class people buy homes. What we need to do is deal with the affordability of them, which will cause, you know, if we were to say, okay, giant corporations can't buy housing any longer in the United States, or there's a limit on how much they can buy, or if city after city starts adopting this, you know, there is no progressive equivalent of ALEC, you know, that produces standardized legislation that everybody across the country can, you know, that every state can use. But if there were, that somebody, or if one city just does it, you know, Seattle or Portland or San Francisco or something, and just says, you know, we're going to cap how many single resident homes owned by other than human beings. We're going to cap that. If a city were to do that, it would level off housing prices for a while. It would stop the explosion of housing prices. It might even cause a slight sag in the housing market for a short time. The housing market will recover as wages go up. But that would be a good thing, I would think, because it would mean that housing would start becoming affordable again.